Welcome to Minerva. Today we're going to be discussing the Bohemian Grove. First, I'd like to introduce my co-host Duncan.
Hello.
We hope to give you enough information that you can go away and then do your own study. Now, the Bohemian Grove was set up as the Bohemian Club, and it was originally for artists and journalists and business people to become Bohemians, or like urban Bohemians, right? They're going to talk about the arts, they're going to talk about intellectual things when they're together. Talk about poetry and have deep discussions at this club when they're actually together. So it was founded in 1872, which makes it around 150 years old. And it's notoriously known for the Bohemian Grove, which is one of their properties in the Redwoods out there in California. And it's a small camp, essentially, which has grown and grown and grown over the years, is now a huge camp. But they also have a business property in San Francisco. And the property in San Francisco is just like a club environment. There's a bar and there's an auditorium and there's places you can dine and eat and all of that sort of stuff. And we know that being a member of this is reasonably exclusive. It's quite hard to become a member of the Bohemian Club. So do you feel, just to get straight into this, do you feel that this is elitist?
Do you know, this is one of the topics you throw at me. I think, really, we're going to drag this out for a 20-minute conversation. No, what's next? But okay, so let's break it down into small bits so to do something with it. Right, no, okay. Elitist. To a degree, you're going to have to say yes, because it is an invitation-only organisation. So therefore, it's created an elitism, because unless you're invited, you can't join. But it depends on how far we take that concept of elitism. Is it to make themselves, in a sense, superior? Then that's something else. That's a different argument. But if it's elitism in its own environment, then ostensibly yes, because if you can only join via invitation, then it's created a sense of superiority. The concept is the intent.
That's true. And the club's motto, which is quite well known amongst people, is "Weaving spiders come not here."
Yep.
And that is a beautiful line written by
William Shakespeare.
Exactly, I thought you might know that. It's from A Midsummer's Night Dream, and essentially what it means is don't talk shop.
Yeah.
Don't come here and talk about business.
Yeah, it conjures for me so much more, like a sense of, what tangled webs we weave when we practice to deceive. As it's like this concept, to me, it echoes the same kind of sentiment, which is the case of it's the stuff that defines what we're, not just sense we're not going to be talking about business, but there's also this concept that there's a sense of conveyed honesty in it. And most mottos are not necessarily for the outside world to take in. It is for what you take in for the members. It's like, I remember my school motto was honour and courage. It wasn't for the outside people to take it in. It was for the school members to go honour and courage. This is what we go through. Same with Freemasonry. Our own motto is the sense of what we keep to.
Yeah, and it's for the club. It's setting the tone, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's saying to people, look, come here to enjoy yourself. Come here to be an urban bohemian. Come here to do that type of thing. Don't come here to network.
Which in the sense of, it makes its first curiosity, because a case of, why would you assume that it is to network? If you assume that so strongly from the outset, it makes me question where we're going to be Bohemians. Why isn't the motto towards the Bohemians rather than just saying, don't come here for network? I mean, in Freemasonry, we're told, in the sense that if you're coming here to try and promote your career or your business, that is the wrong reasons. You've come to the wrong place to become a Freemason. But that's not in our mottos. That's something when you go through either through where your interview process, we'll mention it. Yep. Ceremonially, it's only until you're actually in the ceremonies we start warning of it. So to start from the outset of turning around and giving this this imagery that this is nothing to do with business, I find quite interesting.
I do as well. And I think most people that would have clicked on this video will be thinking about the Bohemian Grove. They're not interested in the club. They're interested in the redwood forest, where they've heard the stories of the big owl, which we'll get to, and essentially their big bash. This is a club that goes all year round, so the members are using the club all year round, but they have a big bash in July. It's 16 days long, and it's it's basically like an extended camp. It almost feels like Centre Parks, which is a holiday place here in the UK. It feels like Centre Parks for the elite. So, what's going on in the woods?
Teddy Bear's Picnic. Roosevelt wasn't he a member?
Roosevelt was a member.
Yes, it's definitely a Teddy Bear's Picnic. I mean, to me, it's like a case of, I know there's some wonderful conspiracy theories that go around it, but besides going through the concepts of probability, let's work on the idea that it is Bohemian. I mean, and we're looking at I do understand we have to be cautious of looking at how an organisation starts.
Yes.
Doesn't necessarily define what it develops into. And we know certain times where something starts with the greatest of intents, but unfortunately influences change. But if we look at the first people who are members of it, who set it up, and we put the concept of Bohemianism in at that point, it's fascinating. I mean, we are looking at, John London, one of the possibly greatest American writers. I mean, he virtually starts the genre of science fiction.
Yeah.
But he writes. It's not like the science fiction we accept today of going, okay, let's just make this weird and wonderful for the sake of it. We're looking at a time of history where the arts weren't just a concept to entertain. No. It was a vehicle to educate, to challenge preconceived ideas. And again, taking John London as an example, I can't remember the book that he wrote, but it was the one that George Orwell is pretty much taken this as inspired him for 1984, which is the case of, he wrote a book that if society carries on this way, then this is what society is likely to become. Yeah. And this is just an author. It's wrong. I say it now, he is just an author. Because unfortunately, modern authors, we write to sell books, to make our money. It's not the challenge of having these underlying values of these concepts. And that's where I see that phrasing of Bohemian to be, which is a case of, it's not just, I like dancing through so-and-so. It's the medium of art to educate, to understand. The interesting thing is, how relevant is that to the modern Bohemian? Does it still exist? How could it still exist?
Yeah, so it started with artists and local journalists and stuff like that. So that early feel was quite a local community, but now it feels far more global. We're talking about American presidents. We're talking about members of the Security Council, high-ranking military officers. We're talking about big CEOs of huge conglomerate businesses.
Yeah.
These are the people that are going. And it's organised into camps. So you'll have like the hillbilly camps, which is where the Texans go, and you'll have the night owls and the druids, and they've all got these very names which are not helping the conspiracy theories at all. The cavemen's another one. There's some of these great names, and they're all separate camps, and they'll go there and they'll obviously talk amongst themselves and have things going on there. And of course, then they'll spread and talk to each other whilst they're at the event. And my question to you really is there something wrong with the 0.01% of the world of wealth, these incredibly important people, meeting up together closed away?
The answer to that, it would have to be yes and no, isn't it? Because it depends on what the concept of intent is. I know it's so easy. You could look anywhere else besides our site to turn around and say, it's going to be wrong if the intent is X, Y, and Z. But are we right to assume it's that way? If the idea is still on that Bohemian ideal, is it such a bad thing? There's going to be people with power and influence. There's going to be business people who have got themselves, by chance or design or whatever, at an influential stage on the world market sort of thing. Yeah. How do we, when we're not involved with their business, how do other intellectuals support that person and their influences on the world? I can give on a smaller scale. I mean, a friend of mine was really believing that he was going to come into a very substantial amount of wealth, really quite heavy. And he said, to my cousin, I've got loads of nephews, and maybe I might give them 20 grand each, sort of thing. And I just suggested, is that a good idea? And the reason I said to him, says, what if you've got a 17-year-old, he's now got 20,000. Yeah. He's just passed his driving license. He can afford the insurance. He can afford the flash car. He then goes off and kills himself by accident. How would you feel as the individual who gave him the 20 grand? How responsible were you in actually doing it? And I wonder, maybe hope, maybe too dreamy, which is very bizarre for a cynic to say it. What if that is what's happening here? I remember my father was going to a third world country, and he was going there as an exec, and he's with a businessman with him, and the road that they were on was literally being built by the villagers, peasants, and they were literally putting the blocks in. My dad turned around and said, why do this? Look, my guys can build that road, we'll have that done, half the price sort of thing. And the guy turned around and said, what do we do with the people?
Yeah.
But the reality is that the businessman thinks it's a great idea. He thinks of it in a business perspective. We can do all that, not thinking of the next stage. What is the impact on the people around? So maybe it's not a bad thing that if there are people who are worldly aware because of their position, that they can see a world seeing. It says, this person's coming up in finance or so-and-so, or this guy's going to come into a military position within this government. Besides just, that's my military strategy, that's what I do.
Yeah.
What if you do that, this could actually happen. If that is what it does, imagine what it could actually do for good.
Yeah, and it's interesting listening to other podcasts about this subject, because I've been fascinated by Bohemian Grove for years. And that is the point that often people make. Well, somebody's invited and then all of a sudden they become a president. However, there are 2,000 people that go to this event. We're only ever focusing there on the people that do very well. We're probably not focusing on the people that go there and don't end up as a president or as a head of something. So it's obviously a place, as you say, where these types of people will meet up and discuss things. But we're always drawn to that really bad side of things. And I think the focus there is supposed to be on the arts, but I can't imagine it's not focused on just drinking, having a good time, enjoying yourself. It's supposed to be a carnival kind of, festival type atmosphere. But we always focus on the nefarious.
Yeah.
And that's something that we do naturally. I think certainly as a cynic, right? That's something that you're drawn to. But can this be applied through a lens of people just going away and enjoying themselves?
I suppose the fun thing with this conversation is to deliberate, as you say, on rather than the dark possibilities, but maybe the lighter possibilities. We're saying about that he becomes president. We know, like even within our Masonic circles, if we're in a lodge, we could see people, he's going to do well in Freemasonry. Yeah. Not because he's well positioned, but his character. That he's going to be involved. He's going to be. He's going to promote the situation well, and so we would help. Not that we do give him any more help, but we know how we can help that person. Definitely. And so, if you do see a politician coming at a low rank, say, do you know what? We could help him, not in the sense of helping him get his role, but we can help prepare him in the sense of, do you know what? I see we're going to. If you ever do get in touch with these group of people, be aware that this is their cultural traits. And the other part is there's going to be senses. Really, you've invited this person who maybe isn't the greatest character in the world as being a member. Again, going back to that motif of saying my father looking at that road thing, and you look at him, so you've got the potential, you've got the money to improve that road, etc. We're not too sure about your character. Let's bring him into this group and see if we can change his character over it, in the sense of what a wonderful thing about being outside and being in the natural world. If you've got someone who's so materialistic or maybe caught in this blinkered sense of how privileged I am, take him out of that privileged thing and go, woods, trees, camping. Yeah, all right. I'm sure they've got an excellent waiting service,
I can imagine so.
And they don't have to want for much. But how do we guide those people in top business or top politics, where you can't stop the momentum, but maybe you can assist, be the mentors to these people?
Yeah, it's a really interesting way of framing it, actually. And I think a lot of people watching this and that probably clicked this video were not expecting this, because whenever you watch anything on Bohemian Grove,
somebody dislikes it, I agree.
Well, it's always so negative, and I can understand why people get to that. Yeah. And I think one of the reasons is that if we look at how we know about it, it's through exposés. Yeah. Which is often, again, how we find when we look at Freemasonry and we look at other orders, we find out through the exposés before we find out through the people themselves. And one of the most well-known ones was Alex Jones, who's if you don't know who Alex Jones is, he's a journalist, but very, very, he's been deplatformed off of lots of places, and is known to have very controversial views. And years ago, this was one of the things that really made him more famous. He infiltrated Bohemian Grove with Channel 4, which is a British TV channel, and they were making a documentary, and he went in, he found his way in and got into Bohemian Grove, and he filmed around the place a little bit, around some of the camps. One of the things they really focus on is that there's a lot of what they would call sort of morbid symbology, whereas we would understand that as if you see a skull, to someone that's a Freemason or somebody that understands symbology would say, well, actually, it's just talking about your own mortality. It's talking about life. It's talking about, remember that someday you will die. Yeah. And so to live for the now.
Yeah, that is the end of your route. It's what you do up to that makes the difference.
Exactly. And again, if you're there as an artist and you're there as a Bohemian, those sorts of things would actually work very well for you. Yeah. In seeing that and thinking, I need to make sure that I do good things while I'm on the earth, while I'm here. But we see Alex Jones as somebody that gets in there. And of course, we're going to get to the real juicy bit now. He films the ritual. Yeah. The ritual is called the Cremation of Care, and it is done along a man-made kind of lake area that is, I think, was put together just for this ritual. And there's a 40-foot stone owl. In the Alex Jones documentary, he talks about this owl as being Moloch. I can't. I'm seeing your face. It just reminds me of how I did it. I was like, that's not what that is. But it's an owl, and the symbol of the Bohemian Club is also an owl, and they've done that for the reasons that we've got the same symbol for our channel, which is we're talking about knowledge. Yeah. You go to Minerva. Minerva was the goddess of knowledge, and the owl is synonymous with her, so that's why we use it. Yeah. And I think in the same way they've used the owl to say that come here and learn, come here and and be part of our community, in which we do have deep discussions, we do talk about art, we do play together essentially, but on that plane where we feel it's slightly higher than your mundane talk with your friends down the pub, let's say. And so he films the ritual, and I think the commentary over the top of him filming it just really seems to misunderstand the point. Now, we're quite used to seeing ritual as Freemasons, but everybody will see that and instantly almost put a lens of something satanic across it. You often get this kind of thing, well, that's satanic. And it's sort of like, no, it's not. It's a ritual, it's a play, and it's talking about the cremation of care, and that's what it's about. It's about actually burning away your care so that it happens on the first day, so that the rest of the 2 weeks you can actually enjoy yourself and live without the pressures and responsibilities that you've had on your shoulders prior to coming.
Possibly. I mean, this is where we have this fine line of, it's like when people look at our rituals. We have a concept of death we kind of hinged on. Unless that ritual is explained to you, or you have an intellect to really understand what's being put in front, can you actually take in what it means? I mean, if it was as you were describing, a sense of you're here, we want you to get free of care, then actually you don't want to be free of care. You want to get free of your troubles. That is so. Why isn't it? It's like what's it called again? The ritual.
The cremation of care.
The cremation of care. Why isn't it the cremation of troubles? So you could be a better. But then again, we don't know what allegory it's trying to be. What if it's like again, I was mentioning before, Robert Landon's thing, where he wrote the story as a prelude of what would happen with society. Right. What if that symbol is going, this is the incineration of care, this is a prediction of humanity. Yeah. Humanity, if we don't do something, we are going to lose the concept of care. And what we're going to do over the next 16 days is stop this from happening. Yes. We don't. It could be. I'm just postulating. I have no grounds to actually support it, but I'm just illustrating. Without knowing the context, we cannot predict what it's for. I mean, it'd be lovely to think that, okay, guys, we're going to start off. This is the problem. By the end of these 16 days, we want to solve that problem. In Freemasonry, our third ritual says there's a problem. Our job is to go out and solve that problem. Yep. We value that ritual in ours. Why couldn't it be probably the same? No,
and I think to the average person that's not used to seeing ritual, they view this as quite scary, because people are in robes, for example, on this. And that's a really small point. But actually, when you wear a robe, the read of the crowd watching this, the way that they view somebody in a robe is that someone that wears a robe is very important and does serious things. Yeah. So that's all you're doing. If these people were doing the cremation of care in their jeans and t-shirt, you would kind of look at them and go, oh, this isn't quite right. It doesn't feel like a play. People dress up for plays. One of the very strange things they do is they burn a human effigy. Yeah. Now, I know that you can read really wild conspiracy theories where they say they burn a real human, but I can't believe anybody's believing that. Genuinely, they're burning an effigy. And I have watched the ritual and I don't quite understand why that happens. It feels a bit strange. I can understand it, on the sense of that is the ultimate of saying that's our cremating our care away. But that is a bit of a strange point.
It is. But again, unless we know the context, we can't say it. For example, it could be the case of, like I said at the beginning, it is cremation of care. This is what happened to humanity. Yep. Equally, we could turn around and say, I have a real issue with the sense of we are going to be higher beings, and so we're going to be free of our own bodies, sort of thing, and we'll be the ashes. It could be. We don't know, but the unfortunate thing is, whenever we put a ritual where there's some kind of, I think you turned around and said, I can't believe anybody believe we're actually burning it. Unfortunately, we know there are people who believe it.
There are people.
And so it doesn't do itself any favours. But then again, for those people who are going there, who really do, if they are in a position to make a real difference, even without going to a club where they're doing these things in robes or whatever, they're going to be judged anyway. Was that the right thing to do? They're always judged. They're used to being judged. And so any conspiracy theory that goes out there that's going to be negative, it's going to be water off a duck's back anyway. The most important thing, if it is for a positive thing, that they understand that positivity.
That's true. And we've spoken previously about the Skull and Bones Society.
Yes.
We know that there's a bit of a tie through. Some of the Skull and Bones members are also Bohemian Club members. And again, we talk about the ritual there, where that also feels very odd, but it's about how you view it. I think if we take away any of our own religious beliefs and say, pouring cold water over a baby's head while it's screaming seems like not a very nice thing to do. But everybody in the room is kind of like, we understand why we're doing this.
Yeah, and we have godparents going, you're going to help them.
Yeah, exactly. And
but again, if we take away, we have rituals that are familiar to us, but if we actually look into the rhetoric, it's like there is a ritual that goes, you'll eat this blood and you'll drink this wine. And it's basically describing cannibalism. Yeah. This is my flesh, this is my blood. We accept that as being allegorical and metaphorical.
Because we understand it.
Yeah, and we're so casually exposed to it. Yeah. But you're quite right. I think it's one of the problems we have in Freemasonry too. It's the concept of having rituals is so alien. It's so... The only time we see this, now we're so exposed to cinema and TV, where it's normally linked to something untrustworthy. It's a preempted thing. We go to the darker side of things.
And I'm going to say it now. I think a 40-foot massive owl's pretty cool.
It is, until they said there's a sound system in it where there's an electronic sound system, isn't it? Where somebody's voice goes over. That's where I look. That's where I have to smile. It reminds me of Wizard of Oz with a "Don't look behind the curtain. Don't look behind the curtain."
Yeah, there is actually a picture online somewhere where they show inside the owl, and it is just like a dumping ground for people to put stuff. As you can typically imagine, because it's not what people think it is, in that sense. But that is one of the rituals, and there are many rituals they do throughout the week, and it's the one that people focus on because it's the first one they see, but also it's probably the weirdest in that sense. One of the other things they have is hijinks and low jinx, and I love this concept of the low jinx is the stuff that's pretty cheap to put on. It might be someone tinkering away on a piano somewhere. It might be barbershop quartets singing, or all these sorts of things. But these are sort of organised parts of the week where people are just doing small plays or small acts. Then I have the more hijinks stuff where they put on the end of the week is a play they call a Grove play, and the very talented members of Bohemian Grove, make this one play throughout the year. And it is only performed once at that point. And sometimes it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to put on. But the members want to stay throughout the week to see this thing because it's only ever shown once. And I just quite like that idea that, the club is is fulfilling that every year. It's doing that same thing every year. And I think that's something that's quite interesting. And I'd love to be able to see some of those places. See, again, if symbolism or if there's anything else in there that's quite interesting. They also have talks by the lakeside. So they'll have the members talking to each other and addressing each other. And those will be incredibly interesting because you'll have, the future president of the United States talking to people about foreign policy maybe or something else like that. And I just think it would be so interesting to go along and see that. And on that thought, I think the big question here is, Duncan, would you go? If
This is my application video.
Yeah, exactly. If somebody would say to you, Duncan, I'm a member and would you like to come along?
The answer would be unquestionably yes.
Would it?
Yeah. For one thing, to actually answer the questions we've got.
Okay.
It is. I didn't really know about this society until you said, Duncan, this is what we're going to be talking about. Okay, so you read it. I love the idea that it is, I suppose it's the case, because I want to know if it is what I want it to be, which is this case, that it has a tangible value in helping support this group. I know it might sound surreal, people, you want to help this rich one, what help do they need? But if they are in places of influence and they can influence our lives, give them all the help they do need rather than they go insane and do something crazy. So I would do it for that sort of reason. But I suppose the concept, it does, what it interests me is what is the notion of intent? What is the criteria for actually joining?
I've actually got a bit of information on that.
You mean you got an application form?
I don't think we need to start that rumour. But no, in reading about Bohemian Grove, to apply you need to have 2 people recommend you.
Okay.
And then the big barrier to entry is this fact that it costs, I think it's something like £25,000 to join, and then £25,000 a year from there. So obviously that excludes me from being a member and many other people. And I think that's where we go with this. It's very difficult for people to become members because of that barrier to entry at the start. And also there's a simple fact that when you apply, if you're just got 2 normal members that have signed your application, they will say, well, there's a 25 year plus waiting list.
Right.
So you can be on a waiting list for a very long time until you become a member. Unless you are really making your way through the ranks somewhere and one of the elders of the society bring you in as a potential future president or something like that. And then I think they make the applications open just that bit wider for you.
But it would be nice to think that it's not necessarily for some kind of elitism, but it is a case of, what, we need to get in him so he can benefit from whatever guidance we give. I know it's the lovey-dovey hope that it is that way, but to be honest, I know that the fees are extortionate for you and I. We'd never be able to do it. But in reality, I know of clubs in Scotland where they're social clubs.
Yep.
That's like 150,000 per year.
Wow.
And so if you're looking for something that is just to be exclusive, it's going to be far more expensive than that. So the actual amount, although it would limit the practicality for ordinary people to join, but it's not so excessive that if there is a relatively good artist or someone of influence to, do you know what, we cover it. So I'm sorry, it kind of supports the theory that it's not for the complete elitism.
No, I mean, going back to talking about whether or not you would go or not, I think I'm very similar to you. I'm just so curious that I'd love to go. And the image in my head of a Bohemian Grove member is someone kind of swaying around the woods with a beer in one hand and then sort of having a wee in a bush. Because one of the things that they say about Bohemian Grove is there are no phones allowed, and also there are not really any toilets.
Yeah, really.
Members are just quite expected just to go up the tree, and of course what they spend most of their time doing is drinking.
Drinking and peeing. Don't go in.
No, exactly.
Don't go in the pool.
In fact, some of the camps, they'll wake you up. You have a wake up call with an alcoholic drink.
Really?
Each camp has a different drink. I think one of them is called a gin fizz.
Yeah.
But each camp has their own drink to wake people up with. So it does sound like there's quite a lot of drinking, quite a lot of hijinks in that sense that's going around.
It's going to make me difficult to get that moral kind of storyline in there, that there is some kind of moral, ethical behaviour to it. Unless, and this is a long shot, that the idea of the flow of alcohol is a sense of if you do have somebody in there where you really want to find their moral ground, you really want to identify who that person is. I hate to say it, alcohol does loosen lips. It does normally get somebody to their, says, this is really me. Forget my money, forget my position, forget what I do. Alcohol is one of those things which is a leveler. And so maybe it's a case of you'll see that person's character through it. But that's a long shot to try to justify the ethical behaviour that it might be.
This is a completely different Duncan.
Yeah, I honestly see me drunk is a completely different drunk. I'm asleep giggling somewhere. That's my drink. But it's but it goes back to one of those very early statements of what a society starts as, and what it develops to are quite often two separate things.
Yeah. And it could be a complete mucky drink up now with people just going away and enjoying themselves. Or there could still be that thread that you talk about of the Bohemians and trying to talk about the arts. And I think it's a fascinating subject. It's one that's really always interested me because it feels like a secret society that's reasonably in the open.
Well, it is outside the woods if you're peeing up a tree. How much open can you get?
Very, very true. And yeah, I'd love to hear from people watching this because I appreciate that our view on this is probably not the same as a lot of people that are watching this video.
Either way, I've got a view in my head that I really don't want, to be perfectly honest. So I know what you mean.
Please do leave a comment. Please do like and subscribe and share the video. And tell us your views on Bohemian Grove, what you think happens there, what is happening in the woods, essentially. But no, that's it for today. Thank you very much. We'd love to see you again very soon.